Thank you very much for the opportunity given to me to talk on the irrigated paddy cultivation systems in Sri Lanka and climate change. As the title suggests, today I will explore the relationship between irrigated paddy cultivation systems in Sri Lanka, climate change, and the attitudes towards this relationship. This conference on the climate change impacts and sustainability in paddy farming in Asia is organized by the International Network for Water and Ecosystems in Paddy Fields. Most of the public believe that paddy fields are important for us because of the contributions towards food security, flood control, and groundwater enrichment. These ecosystems are also important for the human race because of their role in water quality preservation and biodiversity conservation. Recently, the capacity of Sri Lankan paddy fields to serve the purpose of water quality preservation has been questioned. Agrochemical and pesticide use by the farming community affecting quality of surface and groundwater is considered as a major culprit causing chronic kidney disease among the dry zone farmer families. As it is already known, His Excellency the President of Sri Lanka is making active contributions to protect the paddy field ecosystems from uncontrolled agrochemical and pesticide use. At this moment, when the water quality in the short term is in safe hands, as water and irrigation professionals, it is our duty to carefully look at management in irrigated paddy cultivation systems, especially under the light of global climate change. Although prevailing management approach may enable the survival of irrigated paddy cultivation systems under hardships, climate change impacts will bring enhanced insecurity to the irrigated paddy cultivation. Farmers in Sri Lanka, because the lack of a pragmatic approach and weak technical capabilities would cause a threat when attempting to provide evidence-based sustainable solutions. Let's look at the irrigated paddy farming systems. Irrigated agriculture in the dry zone of Sri Lanka is carried out mainly with an extensive number of small and medium reservoirs that capture monsoonal rains. There are approximately 533 major irrigation schemes under the Department of Irrigation serving an extent of about 340,000 hectares, while there are nearly 25,000 minor irrigation schemes under the Department of Agrarian Services serving about 162,000 hectares. These lands, together with the Mahabali project, which was commenced with the target of providing irrigation facilities to 265,000 hectares of new land and 10,000 hectares of existing agricultural lands, indicate the magnitude of irrigated agriculture in the country. According to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, the total land extent under paddy cultivation in 2010 had been 1,065,000 hectares, which is approximately 16% of the total area of Sri Lanka. This supports a publication which mentions that the number of minor reservoirs in the island counts up to 35,000 and more are being discovered. Sri Lanka's dry zone farm population is extremely poor. Though there are no published statistics to indicate the number of dry zone paddy farmers and their per capita income. It is a well-known fact that they are the poorest of the poor. The general statistics provide an idea of the magnitudes. The average daily income of a rural household is about $2.5, while the percentage of poor households who earn less than $1 a day within the rural sector for the year 2012-2013 is 86.8%. Since there is a need to improve the income of a large number of paddy farmers in the dry zone and elsewhere, it is important to carefully look at the ways of strengthening their livelihoods. The most important factor in their struggle to survive is paddy cultivation with water in the reservoir. In short, the farmers consider that the presence of water in their reservoir is equivalent to having blood in their veins. Water, which serves the irrigation, domestic and livestock requirements, is the pivotal point of dry zone farming communities. Therefore, first requirement is to manage the performance of reservoir systems for the betterment of poor farmers. Secondly, irrigated paddy farming systems also need to play a vital role ensuring national food security through its supply of rice, which is the staple food of Sri Lankans. Accordingly, there are two very good, clearly visible and extremely valuable reasons to evaluate the performance of irrigated paddy cultivation systems. Then there are two other not so explicit but irrefutable rationale for our attention towards paddy cultivation systems. Irrigation reservoirs or irrigation reservoir systems of Sri Lanka on their own are a vital component for environmental sustenance. In addition, the water supply from the reservoir is the backbone of healthy paddy field ecosystems. Most of the answers to sustainable development, which the developed world has just started to look through Millennium Development Goals, are already built into our paddy farming systems. As such, there cannot be any question as to why it is necessary to prioritize the water management in irrigation systems. Instead, the question should be, why not? Simply because the said reasons are nationally important. Water management, especially in relation to reservoirs, is imperative. Need to prioritize water management in irrigation systems is not unknown to either irrigation or water sector professionals. This necessity is definitely well understood by the decision makers and public representatives. Therefore, successive governments have allocated significant financial resources for development, operation, and maintenance of these systems. To many, it is not a secret that though the finances for irrigation systems are committed and infrastructure are built, the delivery of output does not cause a significant impact on the key issues which require attention. The truth, therefore, is that even at present, the ride is not smooth for those involved in the irrigation and water sector. We observe that the issues such as poverty, water security, lowering productivities, environmental degradation, etc. are recurring year after year and of course with succeeding governments. Presently, the irrigation reservoir water management in the world has conquered most of its difficulties and is now well equipped with strengths such as new measurement and computational technologies, modern scientific knowledge, and well-tested methods. The latest challenge is the global climate change. Let's focus on the climate change and impacts in the current context. The debate on climate change, with a hint of uncertainty, had been in the background for quite a period. At its 42nd session of the UN Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, the assessment report AR5, completed in 2014, was highlighted as the most thorough and comprehensive assessment of the science relating to climate change. AR5 findings confirmed the beliefs which were in existence even at the time of Rio Earth Summit in 1992. In essence, there is widespread acceptance that increasing concentrations of the greenhouse gases due to anthropogenic origins is causing the global temperature to rise. This rise in temperature would cause chaos in the Earth's atmosphere, bringing about a series of disturbances to the usual behavior of hydrological cycle. Climate change will affect the global circulation, resulting substantial challenges to magnitude, intensity, temporal distribution, and location of occurrence corresponding to processes such as rainfall and evaporation. As a result, the stream flow, soil moisture, and groundwater will undergo changes. The temperature will rise, or the temperature rise would result in an increase of evaporation and transpiration, lowering of crop yields, or even wiping out plant species. The increase in temperature will also increase the competition for domestic water, energy for cooling, and water for the survival of fauna and flora. Let us now move to discuss the aspect of water resources and flooding. Climate change impact studies have already revealed that the annual rainfall would remain almost constant. However, it is certain that frequent high-intensity rain events, prolonged droughts, and noticeable shifts in rain occurrence will result. Rainfall in summer is expected to reduce, while an increase in winter rains is anticipated. The predictions point out that the high runoff during storms and the lack of adequate storage hampers compensating the loss of summer rainfall by capturing the winter rains. Navas, Ediloy, and Montasseri in 1999, investigating the sensitivity of the storage yield relationships in Iran, discuss the issue of additional storage requirements for a given yield or the likelihood of a reduction of usable yield from a reservoir of a given capacity. Runoff decrease due to temperature rise had been studied by several scientists. A study in the Kosi Basin in India by Moll et al. In 2006 revealed that contemporary precipitation and a rise in temperature by 4 degrees centigrade had caused a decrease in runoff by 2 to 8%. Then in 2009, Water Research Foundation cites a study which had been conducted in Colorado River Basin by Nash and Gleitic, where it had been recognized that a temperature rise by 4 degrees would require a nearly 20% increase of precipitation to maintain runoff at historical levels. The climate change predictions in IPCC of 2007 indicates a highly probable crop yield decrease up to 30% in South Asia by the mid-21st century. This, along with the rapid population growth and urbanization, is expected to give rise to a high risk of hunger in developing countries. A climate change impact study in South Africa by Mukibi in 2007 discusses that enhanced water surface evaporation, runoff reduction due to drought, and increased deposition of silt owing to the change of rainfall and temperature are the critical concerns associated with reservoir systems. Modeling undertaken by the Sri Lankan Centre for Climate Change Studies in 2009 suggests that Sri Lanka would experience a temperature rise between 2.5 to 2.9 degrees centigrade by the year 2100, while the expected rainfall change is greater in the southwest monsoon than that during the northeast monsoon. Analyzing 15 climatic stations in Sri Lanka in 2003, Managrin et al. Had identified that the climate change impact on northeast monsoon precipitation is insignificant, while the changes are mostly during southwest monsoon. A different indication in 2005 by Jaitilaka et al. That there had been a reducing trend in the annual rainfall, while the changes are mostly in the northeast monsoon. The same study, considering the spatial variability of impacts in the year 2050, points to a significant expansion of the dry areas of the country, thereby suggesting a significant pressure on the water resources. A study of irrigation infrastructure management requirements under climate change scenario conducted by Vijayasekara, that's myself, in 2011, had concluded that climate change impacts on small irrigation reservoirs should be considered with respect to changes in rainfall intensity and their occurrence. The increase of evaporation together with a consideration of the deterioration of irrigation system performance with time. This work in 2011, which studied typical irrigation reservoirs situated in 3 districts of Sri Lanka, identified that with an increase of peak monthly rainfall by 20%, monthly evaporation by 8%, and a system deterioration by 5%, would lead to a reduction in command area by 17% and 53% respectively during Maha and Yala seasons. A similar unpublished study of 13 irrigation reservoirs in the dry zone of Sri Lanka, with command area varying between 313 and 3,260 hectares and having an average historical cropping intensity of 1.7, showed a similar behavior observed from the previous study. The results support that the critical period is the southwest monsoon. These findings provide the need for a meaningful evaluation of water resources and associated sensitivities in the storage systems of our paddy cultivation systems. The other aspect of climate change, which poses a major threat, is the expected increase in the occurrence of high-intensity rainfall events and the resulting runoff increases. This is already becoming visible. The Central Bank Annual Report for 2011, which presented a provisional 10% decline in the agriculture production index of paddy for 2011 when compared with 2010, states that the severe flooding in the first quarter of the year had adversely affected the Maha season production. This statement points to the fact that there had been unexpected high-intensity rains coinciding with the mid and late seasons of crop development. The above-mentioned climate change impact studies based on engineering evaluations indicate the possibility of incorporating adaptation options such as a shift of cultivation seasons, change in the crop, enhancing the water delivery efficiency and the reservoir capacity enhancement that had been mentioned in the works of Devarachain and Goli done in 2015 and in the works of De Silva C.S. et al. In 2007. However, at this point of time, it is very important and necessary to caution the policymakers with regards to the reservoir capacity enhancement. In a study by Wijayasekar and others, in 2001, it was shown that though reservoir capacity enhancement by desilting could lead to a negligible engineering benefit, if carefully executed, the most likely result would be a greater loss of water due to enhanced evaporation and seepage. Now, what are our options? Can it be the business as usual? Having realized the situation with respect to the performance of irrigated paddy farming systems under climate change scenario, it is now important to note that there is an urgency to superimpose the climate change impacts on the prevailing policy and management considerations which are based on stationarity. In this backdrop, it is quite evident that the true water and irrigation professionals would not hesitate to treat the irrigated paddy cultivation systems as a critical element in their attempt to combat climate change. Since the climate change impacts are already in our doorstep, it is essential that concentrated efforts are integrated to the national development programs with explicit attention on water and associated climate change impacts. In the case of Sri Lanka, this is something which is not visible in the lists of national development projects, either ongoing or planned. Having described the concepts and conceptualization process for adherence by the managers and policymakers when developing a sound strategic plan, it is time to draw the attention towards technical solutions to accomplish the plan. It is important to note that unless a set of watertight technical solutions are in place, the strategic plans would not achieve their objectives. In this case, not only the irrigation and agriculture professionals who deal directly with irrigated paddy farming systems, but also the water professionals as a whole require a great deal of soul searching. World over, sound or watertight technical solutions are established on evidence which are based on sound data and groundbreaking research. For a moment, if it is assumed that the climate change scenario had disappeared, then as it was pointed out previously, the business as usual case would mean a few rehabilitation projects, routine operation and maintenance, and actions following the principle of stationarity. Keeping up with the present trend, the national data collection programs, planning activities, design of infrastructure and construction will maintain the current practices. Under these circumstances, the poverty that is associated with irrigated paddy cultivation systems would certainly become a character and most probably will get described as inevitable. Now it is time to review and comment on the setting in which water professionals display their technical approach. As it had been expressed before, a worsening of the business as usual scenario is evident once the climate change impacts are superimposed. If so, then determining available alternatives requires a radical change in the traditional technical approach. In this backdrop, the true water and irrigation professionals should first convince themselves about the forthcoming challenges, and then persuade the decision makers to take action on the dire need to make appropriate system changes so that evidence-based technical solutions could be provided. At first, It is quite important for the water professionals to establish adequate water data collection, flagging and dissemination programs assuring evidence-based, watertight technical solutions to achieve the nationally desired outputs in the shortest possible time. This calls for a comprehensive review of present stream flow, groundwater, soils, seepage, spillage, evaporation, rainfall gauging along with water extraction measurements. It is necessary to start meaningful monitoring of reservoir inflows, outflows and storage. Though there are enough and more publications on the need to install calibrated gauges to measure reservoir water issues, the ground truth is that there is a huge void associated with Sri Lanka's paddy cultivation reservoir systems. The next is that water management research requires a genuine attention. The interest and level of execution in the field of water research has probably hit the bottom. It is very important that collaborative research programs on water, irrigation and climate change are initiated by the respective ministries and institutions. Success of conducting research depends on the need to provide responsible evidence-based technical solutions and understanding the importance by water and irrigation professionals. This has a direct link with professional maturity and vision. It is time for national think tanks to activate their machinery and ensure that at least one field experimental facility for irrigation research and at least one experimental watershed for hydrologic studies. At this instance, I am proud to say that at the University of Moratuwa, in our own small way, we are now progressing towards establishing a field experimental research facility in the area of irrigation engineering. The only Sri Lankan water design guideline of value belongs to the Irrigation Department. Technical giants in the late 1970s and especially the late AJP Ponrajah had demonstrated a nationalistic vision. In my opinion, the famous Irrigation Department Design Guidelines is the commencement of a national technical revolution which again, in my opinion, had hit a blind wall. There is no doubt that all Sri Lankans are indebted for the great contribution towards the developing of this guideline back in the early 1980s. However, it needs an urgent update with sound technical underpinning. This guideline has design parameters that need substantiating with evidence-based evaluations. It has models and methods that require updating. It has gaps that require fitting with further data and studies. It has to incorporate spatially distributed modeling with technologies such as GIS. There is a requirement to change evaporation, probable rainfall values, intensity, duration, frequency curves, and the yield curves that are of the yesteryear. This guideline is predominantly based on engineering to suit dry zone irrigated agriculture. However, the nation continues to use the same in other terrains and climates simply because it is the only guideline that is available for any sector. Finally, the most important of all actions toward the sustenance of irrigated paddy cultivation systems is to establish a peer review system for the technical documentation. This is the check for rationalizations when providing alternatives. Unfortunately, in order to perform this to a satisfactory level, there is a need to have a critical mass of knowledge within each responsible agency. In the present day context, the associated human resources required to possess at least master's degrees to keep up with the world trends. The professionals need to exert conscious continuous professional development, and peer-reviewed publications must back the staff competence in water and irrigation. The professionals who are responsible for the delivery of water and irrigation infrastructure to the poorest of the poor in the country should possess the competence to carry out third-party review of both consultant-based and self-executed technical reports. These four factors, namely a sound verification database, a focused research and development program, an up-to-date design guideline, and a critical mass of human resource capable of peer review must be developed hand in hand. It is time to defragment our own systems, clear our conscience, and then re-register the need to prioritize the sustenance of water resources and the irrigated paddy cultivation systems. Then comes the hard part. It is necessary to develop proposals and push ahead with the necessary changes to improve the delivery of technical solutions compatible with the present day requirements. Though this is easily said than done, conquering is possible if water and irrigation professionals collectively shoulder the responsibility of securing the sustainability of irrigated paddy cultivation systems. Time has come to move forward from the updated business as usual approach of the past. It is crucial for us to provide evidence-based optimum solutions and then take effective steps to plan and sustainably manage the irrigated paddy cultivation systems without any further delays. Well, this brings to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.